Welcome back to the Changemaker Podcast. I'm your host, Deke Copenhaver. On this episode, my guest is Wycliffe Gordon, renowned musician, composer, conductor, arranger. He was born in Waynesboro, Georgia, veteran member of the Wynton Marsalis Septet from 1989 through 1995, original member of Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra 1995 through 2000, featured guest artist on Billy Taylor's Jazz at the Kennedy Center series. It goes on and on. Arrangement of the theme song to NPR's All Things Considered is heard daily across the globe. So you've also played with musicians like David Sanborn, Wynton Marsalis, Paul Simon, Natalie Birch, and Ricky Skaggs, Arturo Sandoval, and the list goes on and on. So I don't want to take up the whole podcast with your introduction, but ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Wycliffe Gordon.
Welcome to the Changemaker Podcast, hosted by Deke Copenhaver. Deke is the author of The Changemaker, a Forbes publishing book that has reached #1 on Amazon on multiple occasions and in multiple categories like management skills and total quality management. During this podcast, Deke interviews exceptional change-making leaders. Deke currently operates Copenhaver Consulting, where he helps local governments and other public organizations maximize their potential. He's also a sought-after public speaker. We hope that the Changemaker has an impact on you today and that you find takeaways that make you a better leader in your life. Now, here's Deke.
Thanks so much. You just reminded me of some of the things that I've not thought about in quite some time, but thank you for having me.
Well, it is absolutely amazing, and I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. You are also the director of jazz studies at Augusta University, which we'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. But how does a young man born in Waynesboro, Georgia, come to? I was reading some of your awards and you're internationally renowned. How did you get from humble beginnings in Waynesboro to where you are now?
I have absolutely no idea, other than music. Yeah. There was always music in my life or in our lives. And my late father, he played and studied classical piano. So that's what we heard at home, but he also played in church. So we heard gospel music. On the radio, I think we lived in Waynesboro. We heard a little country music or whatever the popular music was at that time. But music was always a part of our existence. So little did I know, as much as growing up and being a boy down in the country, wanting to play sports and do whatever, boys wanted to do. I didn't know how much music would be a part of my life, and little did I know it was always there. And then, when we moved to Augusta at the end of fifth grade year, and my brother went to junior high school, and that time you had to have, you can have up to 3 electives. One had to be PE because of the American Council on Physical Fitness and Sports. And he chose band and something else and came home with an instrument. And I'd seen instruments before, but I wanted to play the drums. And, of course, parents said, no. But eventually I got in band, and my love for music just flourished, and it stayed with me from 7th grade to junior high school, 8th high school, college, and right into my professional career.
I was thinking about it today prior to our interview, but really musicians are entrepreneurs, because I was thinking about you deciding to have a career in music, and it sounds like your family is a musical family. But that's a risky choice to make. And I think that's part of leadership or entrepreneurship, is be willing to take those leaps of faith.
You're so right about that. And I run into that so much in my travels when I speak with parents of children, grade school, that want to go into music, and several times the parents will say, well, music, the very thing that you said, it's risky. Well, isn't that a hard profession? Isn't it hard to make a living? And I said, well, I don't know. And simply because I never really thought that it was anything that was hard to do. I just knew that it was something that I loved to do. And when I look back on it, I think that when you find something that you love and that you're passionate about, and you work towards that, you work on developing that, I think that the doors will open for you. I never saw it as being hard. Difficult travel-wise? Yes. Difficult. We have to get up at 4 a.m. to catch a 6 o'clock flight, or 3 to go take the bus somewhere. Yeah, those things can be difficult, but the 2 hours or 3 hours that we put in on the stage that night, the performance makes all those years worth it. And it's it's also just self-inspiring, and I can talk about that a little later. But what music means to me now, it's not just a form of entertainment. It goes so much deeper than that, and I'm not sure that I was aware of that when I was young, and maybe that thing kind of brought me into the music, and now I feel a responsibility to just share it. So when I talk with my students, the music that we play, it goes far beyond the stage. It's not just I played a successful solo or we hit all of the notes and we played the song perfect. The music serves a much greater purpose than that. And now that I'm aware of that, I am like, wow, I've been really, really blessed that this has been a way for me to support myself, but to also to keep me alive.
Yeah. Well, I totally get it. And I had you as a guest on my radio show one time, back when I had a radio show years ago, but we talked about being able to connect with an audience. And I remember that you asked me, could I feel my audience through the microphone? And I said, yes, absolutely. And you said, I can too. I put that in my book. But I think our nation needs healing right now more than ever. And I think there's a spiritual aspect to music, and it is healing. Your music, jazz music, is soothing to me.
Well, I'm glad that you said that, and thanks. I've gotten a chance to witness music, how it can turn frowns into smiles, and oftentimes, if I run into something. Where, I was traveling one day doing the Florida Music Educators Association earlier this year, and got on a plane. I got in my seat first. I was in first class, and I put my horn above, and then someone came on late, and I think it was maybe another pilot deadheading somewhere. Anyway, he took my horn down and put his bag there, so I guess he'll put it back. But then he moved another bag, and I was like, and it was really, just disturbing. And then he said to me, well, that's not supposed to be there. I said, but it was. And then he said, well, it's illegal for it to be there. I said, well, says who? And I fly all the time. Now here I am, and I'm talking to a pilot. And anyway, without going through all of the details, I had to really calm myself. And all I can think of, if I could just play for this guy, if I could play some music for him. And for me, that's my go-to now, because, I've been been playing professionally for about 35 years now. And as I look back over my career from playing with Winton in the 1989, how music has moved or changed people. And I think back on different times now where it made people get in touch with those things that we have that are in common. So, and I'm not sure why, and I was so flustered by it. Tears came to my eyes because I had to give a keynote speech that next morning at the Florida Music Educators Association. I said, there can't be a confrontation here on the plane, but all I can think of, and I shared that story. I had 15 minutes to speak, and I said, I can't talk about it. So I got to talk about it. Yeah. And I just said, if I could have played some music for this person, I feel like whatever that was, and at the end, it would have washed it away. And after I talked about it, I felt better, and I said, you know what, I feel sorry. Whatever was going on with him, I hope he's okay. But that evening, I was just So, anyway. But music, it's the thing that has kept me centered, because you're on the road. It's like, oh, we're on the road 275, 300 days a year. It gets rough.
Yeah.
The travel gets rough. People see the 2 hours, 2.5 hours we are on stage. Say, oh, well, I'd love to do what you guys do. Love to do it. And if we're on a tour bus, we may have some friends that'll come out and travel. Say we're in the northeastern region, Pennsylvania, D.C., and they'll come out for a couple of days, and after 2 days, they'll say, I don't see how you all do this, in terms of, because it's not we don't leave at the same time every day. Things, change. So it can get pretty rough. And for me, music was what always kept me centered, and particularly it was gospel music. Played jazz all the time, but I grew up down south, and we heard classical music at home, around people in church. My father played gospel music, and that's what I would listen to. And of course, I would listen to jazz, but that felt like work. But when I was centered, just said, oh, have another 13-hour bus ride. I get into that back lounge and put on Georgia Mass Choir or something, and it would just be okay.
Yeah.
So,
well, and that's you talk about life on the road. Young man from Augusta, Hodges Usry, is the videographer for Lady Antebellum. He was a guest on the show. Mm-hmm. I said, I think your average man or woman on the street has this idea that being in a band and traveling and everything is really, it's not as glamorous as most people think it would be, correct?
You're so correct. Yes, it is not.
Well, so talk to me a little bit about what it's like to lead a band, because so much of what I talk about is leadership, but that must be, working with creatives and everything, that's probably not an easy job at all.
No, it's not, but it's a good job. Mm-hmm. I think everyone that plays in the band should get the opportunity to lead a band so they can understand. It's like you can practice the saxophone or the trumpet, but if you never sit down to play the piano or attempt to play the bass, you can work with those musicians or instrumentalists, but to pick up a bass and to play, to sit behind a drum set and to play, to see the coordination that it takes to play, then and the sound that you can make with it, it helps you to learn to be in tune with what to listen for when you are playing. Mm-hmm. So I think that every band member should get an opportunity to be a band leader. Mm-hmm. If it's just for a gig, say, hey, you take over the show. Or I do it with my band, mm-hmm. the International All-Stars. So I'm going to feature Adrian and Ehud. What are you going to play? So they take over the bandstand for that song, or they decide what they're going to play. They announce it. But with the International All-Stars, that's a band we come together and play. I don't travel 300 days out of the year anymore. Won't go back to that ever. But they're all band leaders in their own right. Adrian has his band. Ehud has his band. Yasushi has his band. Alvin, they all have bands. So I think when we come together, it's a lot easier to play, to play the role. And if they feel that I need them to take over or to kind of take the lead, then, they can do that. So I think it's important, very important to understand it's not an easy task, but if you give others an opportunity to do it, then I think it makes it a lot less difficult to deal with when you're leading at least those folks.
Well, and I think you've really hit on two characteristics to my mind of good leadership. Mm-hmm. And one is training up the next generation or the next group of leaders, mm-hmm. but that makes it easier on you because it's not all on you. So you're delegating effectively, but also a willingness to walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. Mm-hmm. And I think that's when you say that somebody plays the bass and then moves on the piano, it's hard to understand people if you're not willing to walk a mile in their shoes and to put yourself through the same experiences they've had.
Amen. That's all I can say. Yes, indeed, and that's it. And when you have the willingness to do that, whether you have the opportunity so much or not, if you have the willingness to do that, those are the musicians I want to work with all the time, every time, because they come with. I'm bringing something, and you can use as much or as little of it as you want. And that's when my manager, she used to say, "You always featuring the guys in the band." I said, "I love to hear them play.
Yeah,
I love to hear them do their thing." And I'm not worried. I'm not really worried that people are not going to think that I'm not the leader. I am the leader, but that's how I like to lead. I'm the leader of the band, but we're going to feature. I'm going to feature everyone in the band, and they're going to do their thing and give them that. Well, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and that's, I love to do what I do. I love to talk to people because I'm so curious, and I learn from my guests regularly. But it's I never want to over talk or interject myself. It's I just enjoy listening to other people's stories, and I think our audience does as well. And it's just. It's fun to bring on people like yourself to just have a good conversation. And frankly, I missed that when COVID first hit. And I want to talk a little bit about that. I mentioned to you before coming on air, I had a speaking engagement, my first big one on a college campus. And I love to talk to people, whether it's as a speaker, whether it's interviewing them, but I just feel that connection with them. And so for me, when COVID hit, I kind of felt like I lost that connection a little bit. So I know you were telling me that you enjoyed being home, but did you miss when COVID hit having audiences?
Of course, I did miss having audiences when COVID hit, but I learned to enjoy something that I didn't get a chance to see when I had audiences all the time, which was being at home, and the audience became a little different. Not the same. We had Zoom, we had Teams, and it's not the ideal way to connect, because I love being in the room with people, feeling the energy of other folks. So I remember doing some master classes, and I'd say on the Zoom screen, if we were here, this is what I would do. So because there's latency when you're dealing with, those platforms, I would just demonstrate. I said, well, I'll sing this, and then you'll sing that, and I would just give the example. So I had to adjust it a little bit. So, there's the pros and cons of that. I'd much rather be in the room with a live audience. But at the same time, we had to be... we had to be safe. We had no choice. So we had those platforms that we could communicate through and continue to work. And the con was you couldn't really feel the energy of the folks in the room. One of the pros was everyone that wasn't really available. If I couldn't fly, Deke, because of his schedule, now I can catch him. I can get him in front of my students. It's on a Zoom screen or Teams, but now I can have you in my class. I can have you in my classroom where I have to wait for you to be in this area or whatever. It's like, what are you doing Tuesday? Tuesday at now. We always find a way to make things work. When we improvise, and again, I'd rather be in person, but I was able to bring to my classroom folks that would be much more difficult to get. So there's the pros and there's the cons, but I did miss the audience, but I learned to love staying home.
Yeah.
So
that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Not at all.
And I'm sure your wife appreciates that too.
Yes. She likes when I'm gone too, though. But yeah.
Oh my gosh! Yes. I just had a friend that went to this. He's joining this organization in California called. It's the Grove is the camp that they go to up in the Redwoods, but he was gone for 17 days.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, man, my wife wouldn't give me a hall pass for 17 days, but his wife was like, I thought it was great. I enjoyed having him on the road.
Yeah. Hey, yeah. I know that the Grove have some friends that are affiliated with the Grove, and I was just in San Francisco with the group that broke off from the Grove. I don't want to say broke off. They're called the Family. There's another one. And I met with them. I played with them. I was doing a jazz camp in Stanford, in Palo Alto, and they booked something for me on Friday night, I think. Matter of fact, I'm going back to visit. We played the gig, and then the other musicians just went back to campus. But I was talking and said some kind of we got on scotch and cigars. We have a camp over here, so theirs is on. Well, one of their places. They have one in the city, and then there's one in the Redwoods as well. And he said, well, no, we want to stay and have a scotch and a cigar after. I said, yeah, maybe. And I thought he was just talking. They went and we walked around, and there was they have different encampments. And the guy opened up his place and set out the scotch. Yeah, and we sat out, and they were really, really, some really nice folks. And I said, oh, wow, this is, and it's for artists. So, production people, actors, singers, dancers, Broadway, jazz, classical. Yeah. So I'm going to visit this week, and but I think it's only going to be for 2 or 3 days with major activities happening on Thursday and I think Friday and Saturday. Yeah. So it's pretty interesting because when we came up, I said, oh, one of these places. But then again, something you said earlier, all you really have to do is to talk to people. Yep. And, we talked, and it was, I felt like I made some really, good new friends. And anyway, I'm looking forward to it. But I know another musician friend of mine that's at the Grove.
That is cool. Well, I'll have to tell my buddy about that too, about that connection. Well, tell me, so who have been, you've played with, I just listed a few of them, but who are some of your favorite musicians to play with?
Favorite musicians to play with? Oh, wow.
And if Winton's listening, I guess you better say him because you work with him.
Oh, that was the most formative situation that I was in terms of opportunity and growth as a musician, because we always talked about the music. It was, we played a gig, and then the gig would be, oh man, we get on the bus afterwards, and we talk about the gig and what happened. Show me what when you did this, what was that? And then and the thing I loved about it that was so poignant about that gig was the musicians were always concerned about playing their best, but also looking their best. And to me, that was real. That left an indelible impression, because a lot of what I see nowadays, I'm a little bothered by it, and I hope I'm not a dinosaur. But people see you before they hear you, and you're making a presentation. This is something important, at least important. I feel like it's important, so I don't need to put a tuxedo on, but I'm not gonna come out with I'm gonna play volleyball. Yeah. So that gig was, I think, the most important in terms of that. But I got a chance. Everyone else you called out, Dizzy Gillespie, Herbie Hancock. I met those folks in that situation because we'd be on a lot of the large festivals, and that's where they would be. And I got a chance to come into contact with the greatest of the jazz trombone players, the classical trombone players, because I was playing with Winton's septet. I was the seventh member to join the Winton Marsalis, and it became a septet. So, and I think what makes it so special was not just the gigs that we played, but the memories that have come from it that make me realize the importance of why I play music now, and what is important for me to teach students about the connection with music. And I think I shared that story with you about Germany on the last podcast. But then as I continue to travel, I was reminded of one time we were somewhere in South America, not sure if it was Brazil or Argentina. I forget. But we played this great gig, this great concert hall. Fabulous. They took us out to eat in this, nice, restaurants. Seated us at the table, and it's either Spanish or Portuguese speaking country. I don't speak either, and even though we had a translator, it was like we just sat down to eat and had a band over in the corner getting ready to play. I was like, oh, they have some musicians playing. Now they couldn't speak English, and most of us didn't speak the language of their country, but we sat down to order our food. And they sat up and they started playing. And they played music from a CD that we had just released less than a month ago. And they were playing it for memory. And it was like we at the table. We all got up from the table and went over to the musicians. We were smiling, but we just hugged them because what music does, and I say this a lot. Now, music can sometimes say what words can't. So what we did, between songs, we just hugged those cats. It's just like, I love you. And the love that they showed for us by learning music that had just come out on a CD, and they took the time to learn to play it. And I was like, wow. I said, I could say I love you, but nothing like sometimes words don't get it. And there are times where music can soothe, it can make us realize our connection, the vibrations through music, and I'm a firm believer of that.
I totally agree with you, and I mean it's so much of what I've done in my life. I view it as spiritual, and we talk about, you never considered a risk getting into the music industry, and I've taken leaps of fancy my whole life, but it works out. And I had a young lady telling me yesterday, she's like, oh my gosh, I got to go back to corporate America. I'm like, I was there one time. I'm glad that the Lord didn't lead me in that way, because it's that spiritual and that energy aspect. But I do want to talk to you just a little bit about being director of jazz studies at Augusta University. Mm-hmm. That's you being a teacher and a professor. That's a cool thing too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so important, and to be able to do it here at home. My first teaching job in 2000, I left the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra at the end of the touring season in the summer of 2000, and I took my first teaching appointment at Michigan State. I taught there 2 years full-time, and then I taught at Juilliard full-time for 7 years, Manhattan School for 7 years, and here, back in 2014, we started, I think it was during an Arts in the Hearts, and we thought it'd be a good idea maybe to start a Wycliffe Gordon scholarship here at what was called Augusta State University at that time. It was before, it was before 2014. I started working here 2014. Mm-hmm. And the scholarship happened a few years before that. But anyway, make a long story short, it has led to a part-time appointment where I was here 6 weeks and from 2014 to 2018. And then I was offered the opportunity to come here and teach full-time and to direct the jazz studies program. Now, it's been pretty difficult because we're a music department as opposed to a music school, and so we're still building our programs. But to go from teaching at Juilliard to the Manhattan School, two major conservatories in the United States or the world, however you want to look at it. But I'm so proud to be here, home in Augusta, and getting the opportunity to do that here, because I feel like not because I'm here, not just because I'm here, but because I can bring all of my friends and I can reach out. And again, like I said, during COVID via Zoom, I've been wanting to get Terrell Stafford here, Tia Fuller, and guests that are in California. And then, nobody's going to get on the plane even when the ban on COVID lifted a little, but we could still get them here. So I think that we have a lot to offer our students. And besides, I'm from here.
Yeah.
This is home for me. And it's so important, coming from Waynesboro, growing up here in Augusta, going to school in Richmond County, to be here and to want to afford those opportunities, whether students want to go into music, or not. But I want to bring those things and what I've gotten a chance to see all over the world and share it with my students, whether I'm teaching music history, improvisation, or whatever. But I'm loving being here. I'm home. I threatened for 10, 15 years, but the road kept calling. 2020, COVID shut everything down, and I was like, wow, this is strange. I eventually put my suitcase away, and even though I was teaching full-time then, I was like, now I'm here full-time.
Yeah.
And I said, cool, I like it. I don't want to go back on the road. So I'm loving it. We're building, just working on building on all of our music programs here because, everyone, we have University of Georgia and the big university, so everyone's kind of looking there. And so we're in the midst of just creating something at our music department that will attract students to come here because it's a smaller music department, but then you get a little more of that personalized attention than you probably would at a great big university. And there's no shade or anything to large universities, but I'm looking forward to building and doing what we can do and reaching out into this community first and foremost.
Well, we're loving having you home, but I'll tell you. So our listenership is more broad-based. It's not just here in Augusta, but I hope by you mentioning that there are some kids out there that might think, well, maybe I want to try a university experience in music that's on the smaller scale where I've got somebody like Wycliff Gordon, who's a world-renowned legend who's building this out. But that's very cool. Well, as we get down towards that, do you have any music that you wanted to promote or anything? You got anything?
Well, I have some concerts coming up. I can leave you with some CDs.
Absolutely.
I have a CD, one of the last CDs with the group, the International All-Stars. We did, it's called I Give You Love. And we did a CD, 10, 12 years ago that was a tribute to Louis Armstrong called Hello Pops. And I thought about this kind of being that. And see, the thing about playing with these guys, I can play jazz from any period. We can play early jazz, we can play bebop, we can play, postmodern, we play original compositions, and they know the history of jazz. Everyone in this band know the history of their instruments and jazz. So this is a fun project that has a couple of original compositions, but this is the International All-Stars. I Give You Love, a CD that we done. And then there's the one Within These Gates of Mine, which is from a film score that we showed. Matter of fact, it was in February of 2020 because everything shut down after that. And it's been shown only, performed live only 4, maybe I think 5 times. Twice in New York, once in Savannah. So the 4th time it was here. And this is the soundtrack from that. And even though I haven't released a DVD, it's based on an Oscar Michaud film called Within Our Gates. It came out in 1920. And basically it was an answer to D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation. And I didn't really know how poignant the film was until I actually watched it and started writing the music for it. But those are just 2 projects that I'm audio recording. And I'm looking forward to releasing it with the DVD. And we did record another CD in 2019. It's been mixed and mastered. I haven't released it yet, so my manager just has to stay on me to go ahead and get that done. And But the International All-Stars are going to be here in November. They're going to be in residence
Good deal.
for a week. We play Spivey Hall. The date slips me now. But they're going to be here for a week. And this is the kind of thing that I want, like I said, when I talk about bringing to the students, to bring, I had Adrian on last year, and he's from Australia, Yasushi from Japan, Ehud's from Israel, and Alvin, of course, he's from North Carolina. But to bring all of their experience in working with and teaching the kids in master classes, workshops, and and short performances. So I'm going to have them in residence here, and that's my, swan song, to have the guys that I work with most and respect, because you have the woodwinds covered. I'll be the brass, piano, bass, and drums, and they're all educators. So they have taught at universities, they've taught at conservatories. So it's not like, hey, we're just going to get someone together to perform. You want to talk with them about being a musician or selecting colleges or university. They can talk about, and that's the thing I love about them. They're prepared to talk about all of it, and they understand the importance, which is why I love playing with them, of listening. So, and that's what makes it so fun to play with them or to talk with them. So,
well, and it sounds like that's a beautiful reflection of diversity, bringing people from all over the world. That is super, super cool, and that's the world that I see. I see a beautifully diverse world, and the more we can reflect that, the better. But, well, as we get towards the end, and there's a question I'd like to always ask my guests, and that's, on a daily basis, what puts a smile on your face and brings joy to your heart?
I wake up every morning wondering, pondering all that's going on in the world, all that's been happening in the world, and what makes me smile is that we have another opportunity to make it a great day.
Yep.
We have, I said, I don't know that it will happen, but I'm going to start, doing my part. And when I get to that point, I pop up out of the bed. I'm like, well, time to go and do this. And because I know there's a chance that it's going to happen. Sometimes it's like, oh, look at this, look at that. You can feel grim, but you don't have to. So the fact that I have an opportunity to make it better, I'm like, well, let's go sprinkle this. Let's spread this around. So that's what does it for me.
I will tell you that you and me both, brother, but thank you for being an absolutely awesome guest.
Thank you.
It has been a pleasure. Dropping the mic, and we are out.